What happens when the dark fantasy mind behind Game of Thrones meets the explosive action style of Resident Evil? A world where magic comes with a deadly price and survival depends on making the right wish. In the Lost Lands is shaping up to be one of the most intriguing fantasy films of 2025, bringing a forgotten tale of George R.R. Martin back to life on the big screen. But will this be another Hollywood masterpiece or just another lost adventure? Let's dive in. Welcome to the Stars of the World. Here, we explore the latest movies and TV shows, uncover hidden details, and dive deep into the minds of the creators behind them. If you love behind-the-scenes insights and fascinating facts, you're in the right place. Now, let's talk about In the Lost Lands. In the Lost Lands is one of the most anticipated fantasy action films of 2025. Directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, this movie adapts one of the darkest short stories by George R.R. Martin, the legendary creator of Game of Thrones. Anderson, known for his high-energy action films, is once again teaming up with his wife, Milla Jovovich, to bring this eerie and mysterious tale to life. Paul W.S. Anderson first gained fame with Mortal Kombat and later worked on projects like Alien vs. Predator, Death Race, and The Three Musketeers. However, he spent most of his career in the Resident Evil universe. After a short break, he returned to the big screen in 2020 with Monster Hunter, once again starring his wife, Milla Jovovich. Their collaboration started back in the first Resident Evil movie, and since then, they've worked together on multiple action-packed films. Now, they're bringing another action fantasy story to life within the Lost Lands.
She has become a symbol of their defiance.
Is this film an ambitious project? Absolutely. With Anderson directing and writing the screenplay based on a George R.R. Martin story, anything can happen. The movie is set to release on March 7th, 2025, and fantasy fans are already eager to see how it turns out. Martin has always been a storytelling powerhouse. While fans are still waiting and aging for the Winds of Winter, he continues to create new projects. The story behind In the Lost Lands is actually over 40 years old, written in 1982 for the fantasy anthology Amazons 2. It's only about 6,000 words long, yet Hollywood is turning it into a big-budget, CGI-heavy, action-packed film. Anderson, famous for adapting video games like Resident Evil and Monster Hunter, saw potential in the story and decided to turn it into his next franchise. He cast Milla Jovovich as the lead character, Grey Alice, a sorceress who grants wishes, but at a cost. A desperate queen hires Alice to retrieve a legendary magical power, sending her into a barren wasteland filled with ghosts and dangers. Alongside Alice is Boaz, played by Bautista, a skilled hunter who knows the dark secrets of the Lost Lands. The film's trailer has sparked a lot of discussion. Some say it looks more like Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon than Game of Thrones, but what makes it even more interesting is that George R.R. Martin has been actively involved in the project. He has worked alongside Anderson and screenwriter Konstantin Werner, keeping an eye on how his early story is being adapted.
Her power grows stronger by the day. Our time is running out.
Martin once said he had ideas for at least 6 to 10 more stories in the Lost Lands universe, but never wrote them. Now, with this film, he's considering expanding this world even further, if the movie is successful. This is quite different from the period before Game of Thrones when Martin was still writing more science fiction than fantasy. Back then, he hadn't yet built the world of the Starks and Targaryens or transformed HBO into a Game of Thrones content machine. In the Lost Lands was his first true dive into dark fantasy, a style that would later define his career, while HBO continues to milk the Game of Thrones franchise with prequels and spin-offs. This film feels different. It's a smaller, more personal project, maybe closer to the kind of writer Martin was before he became George R.R. Martin, the man infamous for starting things but never finishing them. One of the most interesting aspects of the story is its eerie parallel to Martin's own writing journey. In the movie, a desperate queen sends Alice on a quest to find a lost magical power in a wasteland full of ghostly creatures. But is this really about Alice, or could it be Martin himself, searching for something lost in his own imagination? Something he abandoned 40 years ago, long before he knew he would create a winter that never comes. However, In the Lost Lands is far from Game of Thrones. While it has fantasy elements, it lacks the medieval aesthetics of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. Instead, the movie is set in a post-apocalyptic future where industry and destruction have shaped the world in a very different way. This shift in setting might be jarring for fans who only know Martin through Game of Thrones, but it could also be a refreshing change for those looking for something new.
This is the moment we've been working for.
Will In the Lost Lands become a hit? Or will it disappear, just like its title suggests? Only time will tell. But one thing is for sure, Paul W.S. Anderson and Milla Jovovich are bringing this lost George R.R. Martin story back from the shadows, and fantasy fans everywhere will be watching. What do you think? Will this film live up to expectations, or is it destined to be forgotten? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more deep dives into your favorite movies and TV shows.